Okay, so if we're on the topic of condos, a really big trend that was happening a few years back was that developers were starting to build larger condos, like 2+ den suites, 3 bedrooms, and I just sort of wanted to get your take on whether that trend has been realized, whether it's starting to happen now, because I know at ICE condos there's quite a few large number of units coming out there that are 3 bedrooms. I mean, square footage wise, maybe not too big, but at least there's the 3 bedrooms. So are we seeing families actually moving into the core, staying in the core, living in 3-bedroom condos, or like retirees that are downsizing into a 3-bedroom suite? Like what do you see happening with that sort of trend right now?
So five or 6 years ago, there's a mandate from the City of Toronto that the builders started having to build 3-bedroom units, okay, for the demand of families, to get more families in the core, okay. Just like today, you see the trend now where there's a big problem with the schooling system in the downtown core. There's so many families and so many children now living downtown. There's not enough schools to satisfy the need of the parents.
Right.
The problem was when they started building these larger units, the cost was so high and the maintenance cost was so high per month that people didn't actually buy them. So yes, it was mandated, and yes, there was a demand for it, but the builders couldn't sell them. Okay, so what happened was they shrunk down the size of the square footage to make it more affordable, but now the families and the baby boomers didn't want to move into a 700 square foot 3-bedroom unit. Okay, so do they exist? Yeah, they do exist. The large stuff is really purpose-built buildings, like some of the high-end stuff, Four Seasons, the Ritz, the Trumps. Those where you get your 2,000+ square foot units.
Right.
But it's such a segmented market that it's really the multimillionaires who live there.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a university student living in a 3,000 square foot condominium in Yorkville. It's just not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's very rare. So the masses and the families, sort of the average person, unfortunately has to get into something that's slightly smaller. I wish the trend was for larger condominiums, myself included. If I could find an affordable 3,400 square foot home to replace, or a condominium to replace my 3,400 square foot home that I have now, I would do it. The problem is the maintenance cost is $2,000+ per month, which we pay nothing now for it. So so it's a difficult thing. I'm a condo guy through and through. It's just because I have children now that we need sort of that backyard space. But as they grow up, I guarantee I'll be back into a much larger condominium.
So how do you think like larger cities, cities that have always had high rises, how do, like for example, like New York or Hong Kong or London, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but how do you think they cope with sort of the high costs of maintaining a condominium? And I don't know how they calculate it over there. Maybe it's per square foot as well, but like, how do they cope with things like that? Just people making a lot more money? Like, is that how it works?
Yes and no. So I've been to all those cities. Okay, I've seen real estate in every single one of those cities. They are, Toronto is literally a fraction of the price of the Hong Kong, Londons, and New Yorks of the world. Okay, but the difference is the price to purchase something similar in New York would be $2,000 to $2,500 a square foot versus $500 to $600 a square foot here.
Right.
So your acquisition cost is significantly higher, but the actual cost to maintain and run the hallways, which is relatively the same whether you're here in London, New York, the size of the hallway is basically the same.
Okay.
To vacuum a carpet here or there is you just need one person. It's the same. So the maintenance is relatively lower, but you're getting much more square footage. In New York especially, they have much larger condominiums than we do here.
How do you think they maintain? How do you think they keep the costs lower?
Well, again, the amenities are not quite what they are here as opposed to New York City. So if you go to some of these older buildings, they don't have these massive Olympic-sized pools, and they don't have 3 different gyms, and they don't have a bowling alley and all this stuff like they do here in Toronto.
So you're saying those are liabilities? Well,
liabilities to a degree. Okay, it's going to definitely cost you more to be in those buildings. Amenities do cost more to run, and it does reflect on your maintenance cost as the owner. So going forward, if you are conscious of the maintenance cost in your monthly budget, going to a building with less amenities would definitely save you money that way.
Okay, so that could be a separate topic on its own.
It's a whole day topic.
I think we already touched upon it in the previous section, but this question here today specifically relates to young home buyers, people who are buying for the first time. Whether they're, I think a lot of people are having a lot of anxiety in the market today because they're seeing that the market just keeps going up and going up and going up, and they've been calling for a crash for I don't know how long. Are young people going to be able to have issues affording a house in the future? I know this topic is about condos today, but eventually people with families, they do want to move into a house because that's what you need. So are people going to have issues being able to afford a house in the future in Toronto?
Affordability has always been a problem and probably has given a lot of people anxiety since real estate's been around.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think that's ever going to go away.
Okay.
All right.
Except for the forever renters, right?
Except for the forever renters, they don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah. Well, they will care eventually if their landlords sort of are hip to the idea of let's just sell these things and they have nowhere to go. So that's going to be an issue, but that's a different topic for a different day. I think going forward in terms of affordability, you have to look at a lot of factors. Will the market continue its upward trend? I think the quick answer is yes. Okay. So if you're going to buy, the best time to buy is now. Right, it just is, because as it appreciates, even if it's a slow growth like the condominium market has been for 6%, that's still 6% more than it was last year. Yeah. Okay, that's still a big number. Yeah. So you have to be very, wise to that going forward. You have to understand that and how sort of that affects you and your affordability.
People need to get educated.
They really need to get educated, and they need to get into the market.
Take action.
Take action. They just have to take action. So basically, real estate today, speculation in the pre-construction market, you're basically taking a snapshot in time. You're saying, yes, I'm going to buy today in today's dollars, okay, and hoping and praying it's going to be more when I get the thing 4 years from now, okay? Yeah. Even if it's not, well, it's snapshot 4 years previously, it's the same price. So you're not necessarily going to be behind on the marketplace. I like the saying where it says the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today, okay? And there's no different when it comes to the real estate market. If I could buy real estate 30 years ago, I would have. Okay, but I was, still in diapers back then, so it wouldn't happen. But that being said, I can't do that. So the second best option is to buy today.
Buy today, yeah. But I think we have to sort of roll back to the original question, which is, are young home buyers going to be unable to afford a house in Toronto or the GTA in the future? Right. Are they going to be stuck with just living in a condo?
Yes, I think where I was going with my answer previously was if you're going to get into the market as a first-time buyer in today's market, where the average home price is now surpassed $1 million, both in Vancouver and Toronto. Okay, the likelihood of you getting that first is not good. Okay, but if you get into the condominium market as an investment, you will be able to build up capital so that in the future you're actually growing with the market. Okay, so you're taking a snapshot in time today. You're investing in something which will grow with the market. So if you need to sell, you're moving the money from condominium to the house market. So affordability in the future, it's going to be non-affordable, okay? Just like it was 10 years ago, just like it was 30 years ago, just like it was 100 years ago, okay? It's always a difficult thing to do. It is a lot of money to buy any piece of real estate, okay? So affordability is always a number one question for most people we speak with. Into the housing market, the fundamentals of the housing market is it is really undersupplied, okay? They're not building any new homes in Toronto, except when you're going sort of outside of the GTA. No one wants the hour-and-a-half commute in from work anymore. So what are your options? Your options are either condominium or you're popping down a lot of money here. We're talking like $200,000 just as a deposit. Right. In most cities in the country, that buys you an entire home. And that's just one section of what you're putting down for this property in Toronto. Correct. And most of the time, those $1 million properties, I bought a $1 million property last year that was basically a teardown. Okay, so if you want something that's finished, completed, and sort of your family home for the next 30 years, you're spending $1.5 million to $2 million at least.
Okay, so essentially, sort of in layman's terms, what Stephen, I think what you're saying is that you should at least get into the market and take advantage of some of that momentum, even if it is just a condo, because that money is going to help you to be able to afford a house or some other house in the future, instead of just sort of sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything, right?
Yeah, no question about it. I think the point of that was if you're out of the market, if you're a tenant, okay, and you're waiting to time the market, okay, you're never going to time it right. Right. It never will happen.
I agree.
Okay. If you're in the market and it goes up, down, sideways, it's sort of irrelevant because you're also going up, down, or sideways with the market. Right. Okay. Right. So what I did, how I sort of grew my wealth over time in the condominium market, now into the housing market, was I had multiple properties. Okay, so I can move from one to the other, sell off one to afford the next larger property, and I still had that snapshot in time of a price that I paid for 2 or 3 years previously, if that makes sense. Okay, and I hope that makes sense to your viewers.
Yeah, creating options. That's all about. That's what real estate's all about. You don't want to be pinned into a corner and make a bad decision.
No, you really don't. And I think if you're talking about affordability, instead of buying one, let's buy two. That makes it even less affordable. Okay, but if you buy $2 million homes today, 3 years from now, we're growing at 16% year over year for the last 3 years of the housing market. Think about where that growth will be 3 years from now. You could sell one off and have like a 30+% return on that, and you'd still have the other home that you purchased 3 years previously for $1 million, which would have been 30% less. Right? So you have that big gap. That's one way to do it as well. So if your viewers are watching, buy 2 homes instead of 1. This is the message.
Get a bulk discount.
Get a bulk discount.
I mean, so for the people that I work with, a lot of, they're not straight investors. They are, a lot of them are, entering the market for the first time, or, their parents are telling them, okay, you have a family now, you're getting married, you got to go buy a place on your own. But what I do a lot of is I try to find them the best possible property that will set them up for the next one. So it's almost like playing billiards, right? Where you take the shot, but you set up for the next one, because I don't want to see them in a difficult position when it comes time to sell later. Like they're going to have trouble selling, so I don't want them to buy in a condo that's not going to go up in value. And we're starting to see people now today that are not making money in condos. Like they're actually breaking even or losing money, which is a whole different ballgame compared to how it's been over the last, I'd say, 10 years, give or take, right? So if you're saying 6% growth per year.
And, as a whole, as is the entire market. Obviously, there's some segmented marketplaces that have actually lost money.
Right.
And there's some segmented
So you want to avoid those?
You want to avoid those, of course. Well, the challenge is it's hard to predict where they're going to be.
Right.
Okay, so when it comes to buying any new condominium, whether it's off of a plan or it's a parking lot, eventually will be a building, that's all speculation. And no one can predict the future. I'm never going to sit down and say, yes, this is exactly what's going to happen 3 years from now.
Right.
But there are indicators and trends that we know what will happen going forward if everything sort of stays the status quo. And just to touch on something that you said not everyone is an investor. I disagree with that. I think everyone should be an investor.
Okay.
If you are putting down a large sum of money on real estate or a stock or whatever it is, you need to become a savvy investor. You need to understand a lot of factors when it comes to putting any money down on anything, because the worst thing you could do is lose money on a deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, that's the thing. I mean, I try to take that quasi-investment approach to people who are buying for their own personal reasons as well, too. Like a lot of people, they go into it very emotionally, and this is my home, and I want to buy everything that's for me. But when I go out there and I look at a property for them, I try to find the things that are potentially wrong with the property, and sort of the sticking points that are going to come when you come time to sell, a few years down the road. So that's why the 3 to 5 year question is really important, because people generally these days live for about 3 to 5 years until they have to move again, especially if you're getting into the condo market for the first time. So I'm always looking at it, I'm always trying to cover the backside for my clients. But I mean, yeah, definitely Steven's approach is a little bit different. It's a very straight investment approach, and I do bring that investment approach, but that's why you're on the show today, because you bring a different element to how people look at investments in real estate. Okay, so I think that if we were to have a conversation about real estate, we could have it go on forever, especially for Steven. So
it's my passion.
We got finance and investments, so we kind of have to end it somewhere. But if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, by all means, like the Facebook page, and make sure that you add me, and you can shoot your personal or private questions to me or Steven directly, and we'll do our best to answer those as soon as we can. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining me and being my first guest on Selling Toronto.
You're very
Steven.
welcome. It's fantastic. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and hopefully your viewers get a lot out of this.
I hope so too, and we'll probably see you in another one.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Okay.